The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is brought to you by Clinica Sierra Vista.
Welcome back to the 17 News at Sunrise podcast, where we share your news on your schedule.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
All right, good morning, Kern County. It is 5:30 on this Friday morning. I'm Alex Fisher alongside Maddie Jansen.
When we begin with our coverage of the Sierra snowmelt, an update this morning to our top story from Sunrise yesterday. The search continued for a missing kayaker in the Kern River. Rescue crews found that kayak in the water, but they say the raging rapids are just too dangerous for them to go in and pull the kayaker out. The kayak is tipped over and stuck on branches, and they believe the body of the missing kayaker is still inside. Rhett Rodriguez with our sister station in Fresno has more on the challenges the rescue crews are facing.
These were all professional kayakers, professional guides for that matter. And obviously they knew what they were doing, and this just indicates how incredibly dangerous our water is right now.
Wednesday night, 5 professional kayakers lost their equipment on the Kern River and fell out of their raft. It happened in the area of Ant Canyon in Tulare County, just north of Kernville.
Right now, the water is at 6,000 cubic feet per second. That is not a safe situation for rescue teams.
2 men and 2 women made it out of the water and tried for an hour to rescue the 5th kayaker. He died, and the sheriff's office says he is still in his kayak in a spot on the water that is simply too dangerous right now to recover his body.
The kayak is tipped over, almost completely submerged in water. It's kind of stuck between a bunch of branches, and so it's in a very tough spot to get to.
Recovery teams are now watching the weather. They need a cooling trend so the snow melt backs off just a little bit and the water's not flowing so quickly.
That was Rhett Rodriguez reporting. And this morning, Isabella Lake's water level has not changed much this week. Right now, the lake is at 80% capacity. Only a 3% increase in the past 2 weeks. That is according to reports from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Below average temperatures in May and June have slowed that melt off. There is still quite a bit of snow, though, still sitting in our mountains.
An investigation's underway after a man's body was found in a canal in central Bakersfield. Investigators say the body was discovered yesterday morning off Truxton Avenue in the Kern Delta Water District Canal near the 99 overpass. The body was reportedly stuck in the bars of the canal's debris grading system. The coroner's office is still trying to figure out the man's identity and how he died and ended up in the water.
Turning to a traffic alert real quick, part of the road is shut down right now in northeast Bakersfield. This is at the intersection of Hageman and Coffee Roads. Only the outside lanes for Hageman Road will remain open. The closure started at around 4 o'clock this morning. Workers are expected to finish the project at 10 a.m. Making headlines around the state, a big rig driver was shot while driving on I-5 in Northern California near Stockton. The big rig veering off the road, crashing into a building. There's also a car sandwiched between them. The shooting happened in the afternoon. The driver was operating an Amazon truck. No one was inside of that sandwiched car. Officers say the big rig driver was taken to the hospital. We are still trying to work to figure out his condition. Well, it was a big day at the state capitol yesterday where members of the legislature officially beat last night's midnight deadline to pass a state budget. Our Capitol correspondent Eitan Wallace shares some of the key takeaways and has a reaction from both Democrats and Republicans.
Well, Democrats are largely calling this budget a victory for the people of California, noting it invests in programs and issues impacting the state, but Republicans argue it's unsustainable.
Clerk will open the roll.
With that vote, lawmakers officially passed the legislature's proposed $311.2 billion state budget.
Ayes 61, noes 14. The bills pass.
Both legislative chambers approving the budget on a party line vote, giving it the support it needs to head to the governor's desk.
It's a budget that embodies our core values and defends our principles.
That's how Democrats describe the budget, arguing it makes major investments to address issues facing the state. Included more than $1 billion to aid struggling public transit agencies.
There's absolutely no reason we should let them fail.
Also proposed $2 billion for the next 2 years directly for the Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Program for local governments. On the issue of fentanyl, more than $7 million will go toward expanding accessibility to test strips and overdose reversing medication, Narcan.
A vital preventive tool that we need in the state of California to combat this issue in our communities and schools.
And speaking of schools, more than $110 billion are allocated for education.
From our youngest kids in child care, pre-K programs, to TK through 12 schools to higher education, this is an amazing budget. Education won this state budget.
Outside the Capitol, child care workers who receive funding from the state rallied lawmakers and the governor for higher wages and increased cost of living adjustments.
Don't forget about the people who are involved in child care out here. We're overworked, underpaid, and all we want is fair wages.
Lawmakers who support this budget say they agree, stating the budget does meet what child care workers are asking for. But the proposed budget also comes with a $30.7 billion projected deficit. Democratic leaders say they balanced it through a combination of borrowing, spending shifts, and delayed funding. But Republicans point out due to this year's storm emergencies, the tax deadline for millions of Californians was pushed back until October, meaning we will not have true revenue numbers until then. That's why they argue this budget must be fiscally prudent.
Spending over $311 billion tells me that this state indeed has a spending problem.
Even as revenues are declining, the Democrats in the state legislature are proposing billions and billions of dollars of more spending. That is not fiscally responsible.
And so now the budget heads to the governor's desk. He'll have about 2 weeks to review it and potentially ask for any changes that could come through future legislation. Still, he is expected to sign it by the end of the month. Reporting from the state capitol, Eitan Wallace, 17 News.
In your court watch this morning, trials underway for a driver accused of killing a woman in a drunken crash on Highway 58. The woman and her husband had just retired and were driving to their home to start a new life. Prosecutors say Ayanna Council lost control of her car and crossed over the center median. That's when she hit Michelle Rodriguez on the driver's side of her car. Rodriguez's car rolled multiple times. Her husband was following in a separate vehicle and says he rushed to his wife's side and administered CPR. Rodriguez died at the scene. She was 52 years old. Counsel is charged with second-degree murder for the crash, and prosecutors say her blood alcohol content was more than twice the legal limit. She has 2 prior DUI convictions and faces a life term if convicted. And a Ridgecrest man who killed his wife and set her body on fire was sentenced and could spend the rest of his life behind bars. The killing happened 3 years ago. Details of the crime are rather gruesome. Jurors last month found George Smith Jr. guilty of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. And new this morning on Sunrise, fire crews battled a blaze just north of Wasco overnight. Just as the hot afternoon temperatures were starting to cool down, things were heating up out there. This is video from Brandon Barraza. You can see those flames burning through the brush, producing that orange smoke. This all happened around 9 p.m. in a rural area north of Wasco on Pond Road. Reports show fire crews spent about 4 hours trying to put out the flames. No word on any damage or injuries. 5:34 is your time now, and it looks like your water bill could be going up soon. The Bakersfield City Council has approved a 10% rate increase starting in just 15 days. And more increases could be ahead of us. 17 Cecilia Trevino has more on how the price hike will impact you.
July 1st marks the date when all 51,000 customers in Bakersfield will see a 10% increase in their water bill, a decision passed unanimously by its city council.
Motion is unanimously approved.
The city council says it only received 5 messages from residents opposing the proposition, so they decided to go forward with it. But a 10% increase is just the beginning in what will be 5 years of continuous rate increases. From 2024 to 2027, every 1st of July will bring a 6% rate increase of water in Bakersfield, something Jorge Aguilar says puts many like him in a different living situation. Another thing Jorge says is unfair is the time in which this increase is being implemented. He says that the summer heat complicates the issue, as it is a time of year when water consumption increases in most homes. Something Daniel says is people's right.
I think that's going to put a lot of people in danger of not having the money they need to possibly buy food and other things they need to live.
As for the city of Bakersfield, they told 17 News that the money received from the rate increases goes towards operation and maintenance in the department, including treatment costs for clean and reliable drinking water. They state even with this coming 10% increase, customers are still paying the lowest rates in the area. Cecilia Triviño, 17 News.
The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is a production of KGET and Nexstar Media Group. For more on all of the headlines in today's show, head to kget.com.